calls for the Southern African Development Community SADIQ to intervene in the situation in Mozambique after a group of insurgents was able to overrun the town of Palma. But for the moment, Mozambique's government has not asked for any help from any other country at this stage. Dr. Craig Moffat is at Good Governance Africa. Dr. Moffat, good afternoon to you. I would imagine other SADIQ countries, including our government, are probably watching the situation and really worried about it. I would like to think they want Mozambique to do something about this insurgency.
Yes, David. Good afternoon. Yes, if you look at the history now, you would have seen that Zimbabwe has offered to send troops in. South Africa has offered assistance. So most of the countries, Angola offered to send troops in as well. Most of the countries have offered some sort of assistance. Mozambique has said yes to some assistance, but not all assistance. Mozambique isn't keen on boots on the ground at the moment. If you look at the Secretariat website this morning, there hasn't been one statement yet on the attack yet, which obviously shows that Mozambique hasn't asked the Secretariat to intervene. So clearly, while member states may want to intervene or may want to provide assistance, let's say assistance, not intervene, right? They may want to provide assistance. The Mozambican government doesn't seem to be ready to receive that assistance.
And I mean,
why?
You can't actually send soldiers to another country unless you are asked for assistance, because that's actually an act of war.
Yes, it is. If you look at the region, I mean, it's happened before. In Malawi, excuse me, in Lesotho, the troops were sent in because the government agreed to it. In Madagascar, there was a delegation sent because the country agreed to it. In Zimbabwe, in the GPA, there was intervention. So the region has shown that it is keen for providing intervention and assistance. But if the country, like as you rightly said, if Mozambique itself isn't calling for that assistance, then it is a declaration of war, because you can't put troops on the ground if the host country hasn't invited you in.
And I mean, Mozambique's army, it seems, is just not able to get on top of this. It doesn't seem to be able to do that. And no country ever wants to admit that its army is not able to protect its own civilians. I mean, the Mozambican government, I suppose for many reasons, would be very careful about allowing other countries or asking for assistance. I mean, assistance can sometimes become intervention if you want it or not. Yes,
no, that's very true. But I think in Mozambique, I mean, what we have to understand, though, is that the north of Mozambique, from the capital, is very far. So people in Maputo know just as much about what's happening in the north of Mozambique as we do. So the government's intervention there, if you look at the DRC, for instance, when Angola, Mozambique, and Namibia went in, Angola, Zimbabwe went into the DRC in the early 2000s, they wanted mine concessions as part of the deal. Maybe in the north of Mozambique now, the government isn't prepared to pass on some of these mining rights. And that could be a reason as well why they haven't asked for intervention.
It gets more and more complicated. I mean,
yeah,
we've seen ECOWAS in another part of our continent actually becoming quite a strong military force. It's intervened in certain situations. It's had practice in intervening. It's almost become, I suppose it has legitimacy in that part of the area, in that part of Africa. It's sort of allowed to intervene if proper procedures are followed. I don't know if a SADIQ military force would have the same legitimacy as ECOWAS.
I think, in fairness, in ECOWAS, I mean, if you look at the Gambia, they were asked to intervene. If you look at Burkina Faso, after the Tebet coup, the government invited them in. So that's the big difference that people don't understand. It's very easy to say the region should be like ECOWAS, but ECOWAS has the invitation from the host nation to come in, you see? So as I previously said, in Lesotho, they invited the troops in, regional troops in, and the troops went in. But in Mozambique, if Mozambique does not ask for assistance, intervention, any sort of involvement, troops can't go in. You see, so I think sometimes when people say ECOWAS does better, it's unfair, because the countries in ECOWAS where ECOWAS has intervened they requested the intervention of ECOWAS.
For our government to send soldiers to another country, do you think that our people would actually accept that? So at the moment, we're all seeing these pictures, we're all hearing about the South Africans who die in Palma, and, you know, our blood is up and we must do something, we must send soldiers. We send soldiers, they get bogged down. I mean, this happens time and time again with other countries that have a habit of intervening. I think you know which one, Dr. Moffat, I may refer to. And then the people actually get very worried. They worry for their soldiers, for their family members who are soldiers. And they think, well, actually, I don't want our soldiers in that country anymore. I suppose the question really comes down to, do you think South Africa has the stomach to send soldiers and put them in harm's way in another country?
I don't think so, no. But remember, if you want a regional response, it can't be South Africa by itself, because that's a bilateral response. So in a multilateral response, you would have more than South Africa there, like we do in the DRC with the intervention brigade. You know, so you would have, I'm assuming that if it ever came down to it, when Mozambique allowed troops in, it would be a multilateral approach. It would be so you'd have more than South Africa. But to your answer, I don't think South Africa would want to place itself in that position, no.
If we do nothing, Dr. Moffat, and the Mozambican government is not able to get on top of it, if no one intervenes, what happens? I mean, an end consequence of that could be more xenophobic incidents in our country.
Yes and no. If you look at the incident now that happened in Palma now, if foreigners were not attacked, would there be so much attention on it? Because a few weeks ago, children were beheaded, and there wasn't as much noise as there is now. You know, so I think that sometimes our attention on northern Mozambique is also skewed, because if these foreigners were not attacked, I don't think we would be having this conversation now, unfortunately. You know, so in fairness, this insecurity has been going on for a while now, and yes, it flares up, it dies down, it flares up from 2017, right? And whether the Mozambican government thinks it's in control or not, because we've seen the involvement of the Russian Wagner, we've seen the South African consultancy DAG. So I'm not. I think the bottom line is if Mozambique themselves don't see it as a potential insecurity for the entire country, I think us looking at it as a regional response now may be a bit premature, just because if you look at it, it hasn't spread across into the neighboring countries at all. You know, it hasn't spread into Malawi, into Zimbabwe, into Tanzania. There are talks that yes, that there was an attack in Tanzania, but those are sometimes unverified. So whether it becomes a regional problem yet, I'm not sure. Just due to the fact that it hasn't spread anywhere else but that north of Mozambique. It hasn't even moved to the central yet.
Dr. Craig Moffat from Good Governance Africa, really appreciate the time. Thanks very much indeed. An important story developing in Mozambique.